Greetings, you glorious goblins. We are excited to have you back for another fantastic, exciting, marvelous episode of MB2 Underground. I am Sarah Kiefer.
I'm Joe Fox. That's a pretty dramatic intro.
I was going for dramatic. I felt like it was only appropriate for our guest today.
Yeah. Did you get some podcast training or something? Where'd you get that?
I did. I did a certification online.
Can you share it with me?
No.
And then again, tell me when we're going to get fancy and dressed up.
We're always getting fancy and dressed up.
Again, you coordinated with the background. It's not fair.
We've got the C-suite up in here. I had to put on my best outfit.
This is serious. This is going to be a fun one. So we've had your boss, probably the most meticulous, organized human in the world, Chief of Staff, Susan Huff, right?
Yep.
My boss, probably the hardest working guy in the DSO space, knows the most about DSOs than anybody. This guest is pretty unique. I like to think of this guest as kind of the beautiful mind, character in the executive team. Have you seen Beautiful Mind?
No, but I literally was working on an Excel document today, and somebody came up to me and was like, "What are you beautiful minding over there?" So this is the second time I've heard that today.
Movie Russell Crowe, right? Main character.
Is it an Excel thing though?
It's about math. It's about winning Nobel Prize in math, right? And so, a guy named John Nash, a true story, right? Great. Again, Russell Crowe back in this guy even kind of looks like Russell Crowe in those days. Anyway, so John Nash was this famous mathematician. I don't know exactly what he created, won a Nobel Prize, whatever, but the movie's about him and he had some personal things, whatever. But anyway, every time they pan to the guy, they'd show formulas above his head and he's always thinking, always in math, right? And so this is kind of the beautiful mind character of the MB2 executive team.
That tracks.
Yeah, it tracks. So favorite son of McKinney, Texas, McKinney Lions, turned to HP Scott, Chief Operating Officer of MB2, Mr. Justin Carroll. Welcome, sir.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Being here.
Beautiful mind. That's something else.
And the Russell Crowe comment. It's an intro.
Ask Miss Cody if she agrees. Pull it up. Beautiful mind, young Russell Crowe.
I'll let you know how that goes.
JC. But seriously, there's a tremendous amount of data here at MB2 with overseeing 729 plus practices in 42 states, right? There's a lot happening. There's a tremendous amount of data that's being looked at and utilized to manage practices and give advice and such. But maybe first to back up, tell us, I think all roads here. It's kind of the Kevin Bacon game with Uncle Puck's.
You're doing a lot of name dropping today.
I know. Well, I don't know. And I think of Uncle Puck's and Kevin Bacon. Everybody, has a Justin Puckett story. How did you meet MB2?
How did you get here?
Like everyone else, through Puckett. I knew his wife long before I ever knew Puckett.
How?
I love it.
Our wives are best friends.
Oh, that's so cool.
So in college.
Yeah.
Yep. I met his wife in college.
Have they been friends since they were kids, or was it a college
No, they met in college as well.
Aw.
I love it.
It's a good thing y'all liked each other. That'd be awkward if you didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Y'all got forced to hang out all the time.
Well, when I first met him, I guarantee you I never thought I'd ever be working with him.
Right.
It was completely random.
You're like this guy.
But ultimately, yes, like everyone else, I ended up here through Puckett.
How did that happen?
We were at I think it was actually a happy hour for my wife's birthday.
That tracks.
I was not looking to make a change or a move in a job, but I was also pretty burnt out at my last place.
What were you doing?
I was at a company called Highland Capital Management, so a large alternative investment manager here in Dallas. I was on the distressed private equity side. And so interesting work, long hours, wasn't ultimately really fulfilling. And so anything that kind of came up that seemed intriguing, I would at least consider. But he was asking me if I knew anyone that would want to join a dental group in Carrollton. And at first, I didn't really think twice about it. I was like, no, I don't think so.
No.
And then as the night went on, I started talking a little bit more, learning a little bit more about it. He started telling me about Dr. V and how the company was starting to think about kind of building out more infrastructure and the opportunity in the market. And I told him, I said, hey, I'll come over and I'll meet this Dr. V guy.
And what year are we in at this point?
This was 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, so 10 years ago.
Wow.
We had a portfolio company. So my last company, we owned a company down the street. In that building right there off Luna.
Wow.
And so I scheduled a meeting with the management team over there and hopped over here to MB2 right after. I think they were asking me, why are you wearing a jacket? And then I got here and I saw Dr. V in a T-shirt. I was like, why the hell was I wearing a jacket?
Right.
But ultimately,
Puckett did give you a heads up on that?
No, he did not give me a heads up whatsoever. And then came over, spent some time meeting with Dr. V, learning a little bit about the history of the company, but also I think the biggest piece was kind of learning about how he was envisioning the future and what he ultimately wanted the company to be. And I remember I called my wife on the way home. I said, hey, I'm quitting Highland. I'm joining this dental company in Carrollton. She goes, you're out of your mind. No, you're not.
You drink the Kool-Aid.
I drank the Kool-Aid quick.
Yeah.
Next day, I quit. And 30 days later.
What was it that made you jump ship so quickly?
So when I was at Highland, we did distressed investing. So number one, doing distressed work, it's interesting, it's fun, but also, again, it's not that fulfilling to be able to kind of really see growth-minded companies and growth-minded teams that you're working with.
One of our listeners has a question. What's distressed investing?
So
I just got it on the chat line.
Who is listening? I didn't realize there was people dialing in. Am I going to take calls?
It's Joe and I. I'm a listener. Go ahead.
Okay, so distressed investing is when you're finding troubled companies that ultimately have a capitalization problem. So too much debt, equity's not worth anything. What we would do is come in, invest through the debt, and take over that business, and then help rebuild it to where it'd be a successful business in the future. And so we did a lot of healthcare investing. Never in dental. At that point in time, I don't think there was any really distress in the dental space. Fast forward to today, it's a little bit different. Yeah. But at that time, dental was relatively new to me. We did a lot of like post-acute care, hospital, surgery centers, inpatient rehab facilities, those sort of things. And so what I always found in that world was what kind of makes a company distressed? Like, what are the ultimate problems? And it kind of gets to the core competency of the business, the cultural aspect, but also like in healthcare, the alignment aspect is key, right? If everything is run by business guys like me and providers don't actually have a piece of the business from a financial perspective, but also from like a true seat at the table decision-making perspective, it won't work in the long term because I can't generate $1 of revenue personally in a healthcare business. They would put me in jail.
Right.
And so I got over here and started to learn about kind of the opportunity that is in the dental space. I knew a lot about kind of physician practice roll-ups and what's worked and what's not worked. And again, just listening to how Dr. V kind of built the company based on not business people, but truly for the doctors.
Yeah.
And say, okay, if you could come into a situation like this, bring some more kind of process, infrastructure, kind of systems in place to help support that type of mentality and growth where it really is doctor first, it could be a really cool combination. And to be honest with you, I never thought we'd be as big as we are today.
Really?
I thought we had about 45 locations when I started. I thought, you maybe get up to 150 or so, and then another big corporate conglomerate would just come by you.
Yep.
But it really started to snowball and really kind of understanding, we started having more success. More doctors were interested at least having a conversation to sit at the table, where I think the first 2 years, we probably did 15 acquisitions or so compared to what it is today is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But the hardest part was even getting someone to listen and kind of understand what MB2 was, why it was different from the traditional DSO that a lot of doctors had significant concerns about ever partnering with. And then really being able to ultimately, build out teams, people, process to where we could actually deliver on, hey, we're going to continue adding value to your practice, but also giving you opportunities that otherwise wouldn't exist.
Wow.
You kind of came in at a pivotal time. You said 2014?
2014.
So when the model's shifting from de novo growth to acquisition growth is right when you got involved, and that shift had to have been a wild ride. Like you're saying, you're having to convince people of the model, whereas now it's kind of part of conversation.
Yeah, that's a great question. The first, I think it was 45 locations. It was, Susan will probably quote me on that.
She'll
wrong.
know.
But whatever. The original offices were de novos.
Yeah.
You guys know. And so it was very much associate working underneath an operating owner in a practice, appetite for ownership, wanted to do their own thing. MB2 goes out and partners with that dentist in a new location. So
it was like
established. I always kind of called it like a minor league farm system, where you're kind of learning how to be an owner, have that drive, that spirit, and then kind of give you a team to go move on to and kind of become an owner. Yep. And so it was natural because those associate dentists lived and breathed in MB2 affiliated practice at that period of time. Right. So you weren't convincing them that we're not coming in and telling you what to do clinically. You're not coming in and trying to make everything extremely cookie cutter and standardized. Each practice had its own little flair, and they reported directly to that owner dentist.
They got to see it.
Yeah. And so it wasn't really hard to convince them. They say, okay, this owner dentist is enjoying this. They're doing well financially. They like their lifestyle. It's like, I want to do the exact same thing. And so you had a snowball of associates wanting to become owners within the practices, and that's where that initial growth really took off.
Yeah.
But then as you looked at, hey, this works in an acquisition setting. There's plenty of doctors out there that own 100% of their practice today, but don't like necessarily being isolated alone by themselves, don't want to retire, don't want to just kind of hand over the keys to a traditional group. Like, what if we go out and start identifying these individuals, figure out how we add value to them, how you can kind of take that and move it into MB2's model. And it really worked. It started to take off kind of right around that 2014, 2015 phase. And then ultimately, as the company grew, built more scale and infrastructure, we were able to bring in some more outside capital investment to the company. That allowed us to then really take the model more broadly across the nation. We were extremely kind of behind the scenes up until that point. We weren't really aggressively going out looking for acquisition opportunities because ultimately we really couldn't afford them. But once we were able to bring in some outside capital, it was kind of that point in time to say, hey, this is the right model for the industry. There's a lot of dentists out there that I think would be really open and willing to come to Texas and have a seat at the table with us and have a conversation around why we're different, how we can help them continue to achieve the goals that they've set for themselves without them giving up everything that they've built and earned for that period of time.
Yeah.
So cool.
What was it like being here, prior to 2017, when before the Sentinel investment and kind of that decision to take outside capital? Like, what was that process like?
It was a tough decision ultimately because again, when Dr. V started it, he didn't know what private equity was. He could care less about private equity. It was kind of like the anti-outside group coming in and putting money into the business, and that's why again, all the growth over those years were he'll always tell you, like, his job was to keep all the dentist owners poor. And what he meant by that was just constantly reinvesting every dollar that they made back into the business. But, it started to reach a point where, like, those opportunities started to present themselves. I mean, the first acquisition we did was Dr. Dove in Memphis.
Wow.
And in thinking about that, it was a larger deal at the time. And we're saying, okay, great, let's go out and acquire this practice. Dr. Dove wants to be a partner. I think we ended up coming into like 70% of the deal. But the check size was a lot larger than doing a de novo. And so we were sitting there saying, okay, well, how are we going to come up with the money? We want to do this deal. It makes a ton of sense. Plus, he's also telling us he wants to continue to grow and add more locations there. So we need to figure out how do we have some money in reserve to continue to invest in his practice in that market. And we kind of looked and said, at that point in time too, we had zero bank financing. Ultimately went down to all of our doc partners. And that was kind of the starting point of how the sidecar fund started. It was a co-invest across all existing dentist owners that had an ownership stake in Dr. Dove's practice, a silent ownership stake. And that's when sidecar started.
How cool.
Was at that period of time.
I think about 2017 when the deal with Sentinel was finalized. It was like late and on a whatever day it was, and there weren't a lot of people at MB2 left. And we heard a bottle of champagne pop from Dr. V's office, and back in the marketing days, we came out and they're doing a champagne toast out of like red Solo cups. And I was like, I feel like this is a very pivotal moment right now.
It was.
Now we've got plastic flutes,
fancy,
blasted up.
I love it. Wow. So that
I bet it was pretty cheap champagne.
Oh yeah. Andre. No, I'm just kidding.
So outside capital allowed you to invest in great partners, right? Not just great businesses. Because Dr. Dove now is what, 6, 7 locations?
He's on his seventh. He's building a seventh.
Wow, the value.
He calls me at least once a quarter about his 8th and his 9th. And
I
his
love
10th.
it.
So, dreamer.
But the value that partnership has been able to accrue, that would have never occurred, right?
Absolutely.
Except for that outside capital. That's incredible. What is it like being the COO of a company that has such a hands-off model, right?
Yeah. That was interesting kind of first coming in and trying to understand what we could and could not do. And a little bit that's spending time with doctor partners and understanding kind of where they needed assistance with. And we really kind of built our processes around that. And the biggest thing is being flexible and dynamic because each of our partnerships is a little bit different. You have some that really want us to be hands-on assisting and like all non-clinical aspects in the practice. And you have some that you want us to be a sounding board, thinking about more strategic initiatives, ideas, bouncing investment opportunities off of. And so we have to flex pretty significantly to make sure that ultimately what we're doing is creating trust with a partner, that they want to really kind of listen and believe in what we're able to provide. And secondarily is like where you can actually add value, things that they don't like doing today, areas that they don't have a lot of confidence or experience in. those are the areas that we step into and start to assist with, and really thinking through, what is this individual's short-term and long-term goals for their practice and also personal, and then how do we adapt and provide backup and kind of resources to that.
How do you scale for that? I mean, you oversee a pretty large operations team that is not cookie cutter, copy paste operational strategy. It has to be very tailored and customized. How are you able to scale that?
We've been fortunate over time, the amount of talent that's been able to come into this organization across the board, but on operations especially. What we always kind of look for, is typically people that have had past experience working in group practice.
Oh, yeah.
So experience of like multi-location management and oversight. It's difficult from going from like a one practice sort of situation to a portfolio of 5 to 10 or 15.
You have a basic structure built.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Someone that can really oversee a lot of things going on at once without having to be ultra micromanaging at all periods of time, because it just effectively won't work.
Yeah.
And so you're a little bit in the sense when we bring on new talent as well, it's them truly understanding the model, the partnership, and the culture of this organization. That's always been my biggest fear in terms of continue to scale and growth. Because when I came on, there was 5, we call them directors of operations, right?
Wow, unreal.
And now we have 90 plus across the country. And so you don't want to lose that cultural aspect. We're a people business. I always tell people, what do you do? Like, we're a dental company, but ultimately this is a partnership business, a human capital business, right? And so bringing in the right people into an organization that allows them to provide technical expertise, but also the ability to develop true relationships and build trust with a partner and ultimately be actionable. What I mean by that is someone that can go in and identify a problem or identify an opportunity, get buy-in to make a change if necessary, and actually implement and make change. But then also someone that can understand that, hey, something doesn't have to be fixed. If it's not broken, don't touch it.
Yep.
There's certain aspects that just don't have to be standardized within the world. And I think that's where a lot of people get in trouble, is trying to make everything look the same or make something out of something that really shouldn't be. Each practice is a little bit different. And that's ultimately what I love about it, is we have to be nimble, we have to be flexible in thinking around how do you really get creative and think like, how can we improve this business or how can we improve this partnership? Each situation is a little bit different, but we lean on everything that we know. I mean, if you have 730 plus practices, you've seen a lot, what works and what doesn't work.
MB2 is a giant focus group. Like it's really interesting to think about, but it's also got to be a little bit scary because the SOP in corporate dentistry is top down. So there is a lot of mentality around telling dentists what they should and shouldn't do in their practice. Kind of back to your point about being an owner versus not being an owner. And shifting that mentality, I can imagine, as a transition for people to, I'm not in charge. I'm here to be in the business of supporting this dentist. And building that relationship allows me to do that better.
Yeah, that concept of starting with that trusting relationship, that's huge.
I've always said, dentists get a bad rap for being bad business people, or all doctors, right? But I always said over the years, like, dentists aren't bad business people. They're misinformed sometimes. They don't have the same access to information and data that larger companies do.
Right.
And that's something that we've really always focused on, is making sure that we're giving our partners good data, good insight, good ideas, and ultimately, I can use the term, like giving them the answers to the test. Now, what they want to do with that, it's ultimately their decision. We get a lot of buy-in. We make recommendations for practices and making either small changes or larger growth type initiatives. You get a ton of buy-in because we're able to provide not only what we've seen work, what is the best practice, but also the data to back it up and the support that, hey, if this doesn't work, we're in it together. Let's go back to the whiteboard, make a change, and try something else.
Yeah, totally. How has that data analytics component evolved since you've been here?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Early on, I first came in because, again, coming from the investment world with some larger companies, your access to data is really never an issue. Yeah. And then I started to learn about Dentrix, and I was like, okay, how can we get some data out of these systems? And they send me over PDF reports. I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work.
I know. Old school days of tracking new patient counts on an Excel document that got sent out from the admin team every day.
Wow.
Yeah, and that ultimately kind of got us to a point where we said, hey, we're going to start to scale and grow this business. Yeah, we have to figure out this piece first. We went down the path, I think, early on of saying, okay, do we standardize all practice management systems, EHR systems out there, so we can at least have one single system and then learn how to tap into the data accurately. So we went down that path. We did an early acquisition. It was actually in El Campo, Texas, and We talked about going in and converting the system over, making a change.
And all hell broke
All
loose.
hell broke loose, yeah. That was back when Puckett and I were integration, by the way.
Oh, that's cute.
Oh, my word,
You
guys.
can imagine how bad that was.
I just remember going into a practice once and I was trying to lighten the mood. So they were like, "Are you going to change our PMS?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. Y'all going to Dentrix." And somebody like almost started crying. I was like, "I am so sorry. That was a really bad joke." And I never made that joke again. So yes, it's a
sensitive topic. Yeah.
very sensitive. Yes.
Yeah. So we ultimately figured out, like, hey, there's nothing out there in the market at that point in time. So we had to build it. Wow. And so Jarvis Analytics, which is a widely used product across the space today, was actually developed here at MB2 in the old building.
It's crazy to think
in
about.
Percha on that whiteboard. And
That used to be the boardroom. That was just the boardroom.
That was the boardroom. Y'all had Maroulis on the podcast,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know if he will, admit that.
He did. No, I think
Okay.
he did.
All
We
right.
got it
All
on
right.
tape.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good one.
It's that one thing where I still get a little bit angry that I'm not getting residual checks from Henry Schein now that owns it.
Yeah, if I think about how much brain power had to go into that, how much beautiful minding you had to do.
Seriously.
Yeah, but that was our kind of first step into, and the early stages of Jarvis look a lot different and they've done a really good job kind of continuing to develop it over the years. But that was the idea of like, okay, we need real-time access to data and insight information. We need a system that can sit on top of multiple practice management systems, pull out and extract data that we need to not only be able to run the business efficiently from like a corporate perspective or a C-suite perspective, but also tools that our field operations team can use, that office managers, teams in the offices can use, but then also our doctor partners, starting to get them real-time information of how their practice is performing,
Right.
insights, KPIs, analytics. And so that took off, and still today, 8 years later, probably from we've done Jarvis, is really still one of the lifebloods of our business. I still spend every morning I start in Jarvis, and every night before I go to bed, I end in Jarvis.
Every single time we integrated a practice and we would train them on their EOD in Jarvis, you were always on the distribution list. And I just thought about what your inbox must look like getting a report daily from all of our Jarvis practices.
I still get them.
Where do
They
they
go
go?
into an EOD folder.
Good call.
Yeah.
That would be
I need to get
overwhelming.
them to go ahead and take me off by now.
I think it's time.
Because I get at least once a quarter that your mailbox is almost full.
Oh.
And they're like, get rid of these Jarvis emails. But yes, they go into a different folder. So
Smart.
What operational lift are you the most excited about? What now or in the future? Like the thing that, like, something that's coming in the future. Like, Jarvis was kind of a thing that helped the business scale. Way back when. What's that next thing?
I think the AI side. I know that's kind of AI topic hot button. I think there's a lot of opportunity, particularly in revenue cycle, insurance verification, kind of processes that really are not value add that take place within a dental practice. When I say by that, not value add, I think of not value add as anything that's not interacting with a patient, right? And so spending time calling, Blue Cross Blue Shield to verify benefits or follow up and status a claim, that ultimately is, you're seeing technology really start to improve some of that, but it's not fully there. It's not fully baked yet. So we use Insight Desk for revenue cycle management, which has been
cool.
It's been a huge lift. A little bit like Jarvis. Have you had them on the podcast? A lot of that was developed.
We haven't. No.
A lot of that was again developed by MB2. So Clint and Tammy spent a ton of time. See all the workflows built out in Insight Desk were really MB2 workflows that have been built into that.
That's what's so cool is creating something custom with something that kind of already exists and being able to like tailor it to the needs. Finding groups that'll do that with us is really cool.
Yeah, 100%. Because you need to find solutions. I mean, I think technology, if you look at any group out there, the ability to harness technology is going to be extremely important. It is today, but next 5, 10, 15 years, we absolutely have to be more efficient on the tech side.
What about AI for the sake of like reading charts or actually kind of getting into dentistry? Do you think that'll ever be beneficial?
I mean, look, I'm not the expert to tell you whether or not it's great or it works. We have a lot of doctors that love it.
Yeah, interesting.
You have some that are anti it. We've seen more of our operating owner docs that have implemented it, like it for the use of training and developing new associates.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so you're starting to get some traction there. It's not going away. I think it's really cool. But it's not something like from like our type of organization that we would ever push top down and say, hey, everyone's going to have AI, like a Pearl or Overjet, one of those systems in place, and you're going to use it. It's very much because it's a diagnosing thing, right? It's a clinical aspect, but it's something that is very beneficial to certain people. And so we love those companies. We partner with them and make sure that technology is available to our docs and our partners if they want to utilize it, and help them get that implemented.
Yeah, so they don't have to spend the time to figure out if it makes sense.
Yeah, and you mentioned before that dentists can be misinformed business owners. So from your perspective on the more informed side of things, what advice would you give to new business owners in the realm of dentistry, whether that's, they just bought their own private practice, they're an associate with MB2 joining the ownership team? What advice would you have for them from the business side versus the clinical?
Yeah, you need to learn the financial language. And Jackson probably nerded you guys out with accounting stuff, right? But I'm not saying you need to be an accountant.
Called me patronizing.
Sarah's favorite part.
I was like, I just don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
No, but you need to know that language. You need to understand cash flow.
GAAP accounting.
So again, she's patronizing.
I was excited that I knew the buzzwords.
Yeah, all the buzzwords.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I always joke sometimes with the team too that gets too accounting-y.
Yeah.
Like Will, one of the RVPs, I call him Alan the accountant when he starts going down paths of, again, accruals and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
You don't need to be an accounting expert, but you need to understand where your sources of revenue are coming from, impediments to those sources of revenue, and ultimately like how cost structures actually work within a practice. I mean by that, like fixed and variable cost, thinking about, okay, what is my actual break-even point? And then what do I need to achieve in terms of volume and or price volume to get to certain levels of growth? I think everything's always viewed to just throw everything up against the wall and see if it sticks, which I'm a proponent of taking chances. I always tell the operations team, don't tread water. And what I mean by that is if we just stick around and do nothing new every single day and try to be status quo, somebody's going to be better than us.
Yeah.
Someone's going to pass us. Someone's going to come up with some new, better idea. That's going to be, from our perspective at MB2, why we think we are constantly evolving and changing because we have competition of groups, right? But the local private practice as well, someone to come across the street, if you're kind of getting lazy with marketing or lazy with patient retention initiatives or patient experience type initiatives, then someone's going to be better than you. And so it's kind of that continuous improvement mentality and ultimately really understanding like the financial aspects of the business and where are the levers that you can only pull? It's like, how do you actually take an income statement and make sense of it?
Yeah.
Like, what do these numbers mean? And kind of learning about, we use the term like common sizing, like certain cost areas. Like, for every dollar coming in, where is it going? So I always kind of keep it simple. If 10%, 10 cents on the dollar coming in or going out to your dental supplies, so that's pretty high. There's something going on there. Is it inventory control? Is it what you're ordering? Is it just waste?
Yeah.
And so there's different aspects of like how to then drill down, but you don't know where to drill down unless you have a starting point of understanding how the business is performing from a financial perspective.
I love it.
That's such a huge benefit of MB2's, right? The doctors aren't on an island anymore with these KPIs and these financial metrics. They just didn't know how they compared to the industry. I get that question all the time. Well, hey Joe, how do we compare to the 3,000-ish partners you all see a year? It's pretty fascinating. What does the future of dentistry look like in your opinion?
I don't think the consolidation is going to slow down by any means. Everyone throws out a different number of how many groups are consolidated in a DSO, whether it's 20%, 25%. But the reality is the market is still extremely fragmented. You have people like the buzzwords, right? Like there's a lot of white space. And so you're seeing more and more groups come alive, more capital coming into the business.
For sure.
Last I heard, there's like 130 private equity-backed DSOs, which seems insane to me. I guess the market is there, but the concern being that you're seeing so many things just kind of rinse and repeat, just kind of replicating the same thing over and over again, reaching a certain point where you kind of have inflection points of a business, and we went through the same ones. You kind of get to that 50 location mark, and it's like, okay, we need to invest in more technology, more people, more systems, and you get to 100 practices, then 150, 200. There's all these different inflection points, and I think you're seeing a lot of groups kind of rolling up practices, getting to a point where they're reaching that other inflection point where we really got to buckle down, and things can go either positive or negative.
Right.
And then handing it over to someone else to deal with it. And those situations long term, I don't think are sustainable.
Yeah.
There's too many things getting handed over for someone else to deal with that ultimately could fail and likely would.
Yeah. Can you help our listeners understand kind of why that happened? Why are there 130 backed DSO, private equity backed DSOs? Like, what was happening in the market? What about dental was so intriguing or attractive?
That piece I said before as a starting point of white space.
Yeah.
Look how many dental practices we could acquire, roll them up, and sell them off to some other group.
Yeah.
Probably heard the term arbitrage a lot. So arbitrage is the new buzzword, and it's obviously it's been around forever. But
Another question from our listeners: what is that?
So if you're buying something for cheaper and being able to sell it for a lot more,
You arbitrage.
it's arbitrage.
You've
Multiple
arbitraged.
arbitrage. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Okay.
And so the idea that you could just get financial gains or investment returns simply from someone being willing to pay you more because you own more of things than you bought it for worked in an environment where there wasn't a lot of competition and money was super cheap. In today's world, where things are moving more and more in that direction, investors aren't looking for returns solely based upon a multiple arbitrage. It's no different like in larger groups too. Maybe saying, hey, if we bought a DSO, we think we'd be able to sell it for 2-3 more turns later because it's going to be a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit larger. Ultimately, returns come from valuable investments from partnerships, same-store organic growth initiatives, building infrastructure and scale, and having stable quality talent. The talent being leadership, top to bottom, great doctor partners, high retention. Those are the sort of things that create value in these organizations today. And too many groups over the years have just really been, I use the term, people don't probably like it, but like the duct tape DSO, where you're just slapping a bunch of practices together, putting duct tape around it and saying, hey, look how much you should pay me X amount for this. And it's like, this is absurd.
With no operational support at all, right? No 450 people amongst 2 buildings,
Yeah. It's not easy. I mean, that's the reality. You kind of look on paper, kind of put the private equity hat on, look at, hey, this is pretty easy. Just go buy a bunch of dental practices. And you see the exact same. It's not just dental. Derm, ophthalmology, optometry, vet, GI now is a huge space.
Wow.
But you see it everywhere. And it's not to say, because obviously we're in this business, I think it's great for those industries, but putting the right models in place to where it really does empower the doctor to be better with a group than without a group. And not solely just looking at things from a financial lens of, wow, if I partner with this group, I'm going to make so much money because of arbitrage and all those sort of things.
They get their arbitrage and they're good.
Yeah. There she goes again. Man. I apologize for my co-host.
No. Well, and one of the other things you talked about was identifying and having quality leadership. I mean, as somebody who's in a very substantial leadership role within the organization, how do you personally identify leadership qualities in people?
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
Thank you.
Did she always do this?
She does.
I'm so much fun.
Yeah. I look at how our leadership team works. And so every Monday, everyone on the exec team, we sit down in a room. We spend 4 hours going through.
Including Dr. V.
Including Dr. V. It's 2 things. One, it's the ability to kind of make sure everyone's on the same page of what the major initiatives are, not only for the week, but we think about kind of longer-term strategy in that as well. Okay. But I think what's very unique about our team is it's not siloized, meaning we all have our certain areas of the business that we're ultimately responsible for. Mm-hmm. That said, we all chime in and give advice, what do you want to call it, constructive criticism if necessary, to each other and challenge each other. Collaborate. Yeah. Collaborate's a nice way of saying it, but you have to be tough on each other, right? And come up with new ideas and not be thinking about doing the exact same thing because it's worked for a couple years. Like it's that constant re-challenging the model, the business, what we're ultimately trying to accomplish that I think makes the team extremely unique.
Well, and a willingness to be challenged. I think sometimes ego can get in the way and people don't necessarily have the capacity for a different idea, and being able to say, oh, wow, this person who's not even necessarily in my lane may have a better way of doing something that is my lane.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the key then is also coming out on a united front from there.
Yeah.
We can figure out the areas that need to change or make improvements, but we come out with a clear message and making sure that message is being delivered to the broader audience of the team. And for us, it's the 450 employees here. It's the 9,000 out, 10,000 out in the field. It's all the doctor partners and making sure that they have trust that we're making the right decisions for the business on a day-to-day basis, but also really having the right decisions as it relates to the long-term viewpoint of the company. I think that's the unique thing of the leadership team here at MB2. We've all been here for some time. Again, I've been here 10 years. Bucket's been here 10 years.
Wow.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Well, it's...
You started saying numbers like 10,000 and 400 and all of the owners. And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah. Thank God we have y'all.
Yeah. But that longevity is unique. That's not common.
We're not, we're not looking to try to squeeze every dime out of the business. We're not trying to, again, build something up really quick and flip it. Mm-hmm. We've gone through 2 recapitalization events. This is something you kind of learn over the years. That first one, you go to market, you bring in new investors, you're marketing the business, right? So you're very proud of what you've built and like, oh, this is going to grow at X and this is going to grow at Y. And then you realize like, hey, I'm sticking around. I'm not selling. It's like I'm selling my house and moving to a new one. It's like, okay, now you got to deliver. Yeah. Like, whoa, you rolled half the equity in this thing. Now it's time to deliver.
Right.
And understand, like, everything you do today, you got to be thinking about what the company is going to, like, how's this going to impact the business next year? How's it going to impact the business 5 years from now? Yeah. I always tell new potential partners, like, we're not going anywhere. You're kind of stuck with us. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I don't want to speak for the entire management team, but I feel like I can. We love this business and really think that, I think personally that we're still in the very early innings of what MB2 ultimately is going to look like.
So cool.
I don't think we've solved all of the problems. We don't have all the answers, but I think that's a good thing.
That's fun.
At the moment, yeah, exactly. That's what I think what keeps us moving and excited about the future. It's, if you're coming to work every single day thinking, oh, we got this whole thing figured out. This is the right model. Everyone will just come to MB2. The reality is, like, we have to get better. We kind of talk about those things like the technology side. And that's what kind of excites me of what other technology can we be implementing within the company to really be value add to our partners and allow us to continue to scale and grow without the concern of, growth.
Right.
That long-term focus, that's special. That's cool. And again, that's unique. It's one of the many things that sets MB2 apart. Do you think 100% of dentistry will eventually be affiliated with a group?
No. Yeah. Absolutely not.
How come?
It's not right for everybody, and it shouldn't. Private practice will always exist. Yeah. It's becoming more challenging for the private practice to exist. I think it's the other piece is, you had a market even 5 years ago. If you were a retiring dentist, you would sell down to your associate, and that associate would have a path to own his or her practice over time. Now, as all this capital has come into the industry, and all these groups have come in, it's kind of created a situation where that retiring dentist doesn't have the incentive to sell down to an associate,
right? Because
they're going to get a higher price, frankly, to go sell to a group.
It's not even close.
And so, it's not even close. And so, that creates this dynamic where associates have less opportunity, and that's where like MB2 is. We're always kind of constantly thinking of like, how do you continue to build avenues for associates to become owners within practices?
Shout out.
How do you partner with them to reach the goals that they're ultimately wanting to achieve? Because everyone has this mentality that dentists coming out of school today don't want to own; they want to be employees. And I think that's
that doesn't change. You don't think?
No. It's certainly. I think the difference today is you don't have people that want to take as much financial risk. Yeah. Yes. You're also coming out with a lot more debt, which I think is smart. Like going out just hanging up a shingle, taking out $1 million loan with Bank of America to build a practice that you have no clue if a patient's going to show up the next day. Mm-hmm. That's a little scary.
It's a little risky.
I'm a little more risk averse than doing something like that. But I still think that dentists tend to have an entrepreneurial spirit. They want to be owners. They want to have an ownership stake. But I think what you're seeing today, and as the industry and models have evolved over time, it's that idea that I can be an owner within a practice in different types of situations. And, I don't necessarily have to own 100% of the business, but I want to have my name on the door, my way of doing things as it relates to patient experience, team experience, all those aspects that we really encourage our partners to own within their businesses. But then have resources and support to where, if you do open up that de novo and no patient shows up the first day, it's not all on your shoulders.
Yeah.
You know, you've got people and a team behind you that's going to keep grinding to make sure that we make this thing successful.
Yeah, and experience like COVID, right, have helped, you know, folks like understand, like, hey, having Big Brother at your backs, you know, it's a pretty damn good thing.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Is there anything that we missed that you wanted to share with our listeners? All of our copious amounts of
I'm
listeners?
waiting for the callers.
No, I've got them on the chat.
Do you have any Puckett tattoo stories you need to share either?
Well, yeah, I heard Chuck Town was in here, Dr. Town earlier. I was there that night. I could probably elaborate on it.
Go ahead. We usually ask about a fun MB2 story. This gets to be yours.
Was it really $10,000?
Yeah. Wow. We were at dinner in Austin with a bunch
think
of doc
about
partners.
$10,000 10 years ago.
Inflation.
Inflation.
So the one thing, like, never take that bet when you're in Austin because there's a tattoo shop on every corner.
That's literally what I said.
100%. That was the deal. It's like
throw a rock.
He started to second guess himself, and they were like, "We'll find one." And literally took us like 2 minutes to find one down the street.
500 feet away.
And then, so I don't know if you know this one. They let him almost switch it. Instead of the logo, he could put. Remember YOLO?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay, is that still a thing?
I don't know.
All right, but
Probably
anyways,
not.
he was about to switch to YOLO, and I had to talk him off that. I said, if you put YOLO on your ass, you're going to be far more regretting later in life than having the MB2 logo.
The wise friend coming in
And
to
so,
save.
yeah, we drove home because again, those days too, we were driving around in Dr. V's minivan, and so we were driving home. After,
I love the idea
after
of Dr.
dinner,
V in a minivan.
yeah, coming back from Austin, and I remember just looking at him like we were in the back seat together. And you could just see the look on his face, like, "Oh my God, what the hell did I do?"
The walk of shame. Oh,
Yeah, how do you explain that to your wife? Like, how do you go home and say, like,
I didn't
hey-
have to.
Well, I know.
You,
More in, like, the
understand that I
colloquial
said
we.
absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
The worst part is he's 2 logos old now, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It hasn't evolved with the
We still have
That
the,
should've been
we
part of the
still have
bet.
the same
The Iron Man logo. Yeah.
colors have changed.
bullet.
Yeah. So he needs to get an update.
How much do you think they'll pay him for that?
Well, we'll just have to find out.
Stay tuned, listeners. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm pretty frustrated. I haven't seen it yet. I sit right behind the guy, but I'm gonna have to ask.
Yeah, let me leave first. Well, we really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you
This
guys
was
having
awesome.
me.
This is fun, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, we'll do it again. Listeners, thank you for joining us for another episode of the MB2 Underground podcast. We'll catch you next time.
Power to the partners.